Hey everybody, what is going on? Hexalex here. Got another Master Duel video for you. Coming at you with some Spright games. Finally managed to get around to playing some Spright this format. It's going to be Fiendsmith Spright again. List, as always, is going to be at the end of the video. But I want to see how this deck held up in the current meta. I'm actually really optimistic about Spright in the current metagame, mostly because of Droll and Lockbird. Droll and Lockbird is a very effective card in general, but especially against Ryzeal. But when it comes to playing Spright, I find myself including 3 Droll and Lockbird in pretty much every build because Spright is one of the few decks that can play completely through Droll and Lockbird, actually does not care about it at all, meaning that if you get hit with a Maxi on turn 1, you can just use the Droll and Lockbird in response to that. Now here I'm going second against Memento, and I'm going to use the Droll and Lockbird against the Memento McTillen search off of the combined king that got sent to the graveyard. I don't know if my opponent would have had too much more gas there anyway, though, because it kind of doesn't seem like they really had much more follow-up. Anyway, I'm going to lead with Normal Summon Rodent, Special V, Spright Blue. Then I'm going to go starter for Carrots, so my opponent has a couple of back row. I want to get this Carrot online in case there's like an Imperm or something potentially even scarier down there. Going to get to link off the Rodent and the Blue here for Sprind. At this point, I'm not the most concerned about Nibiru. This is something that I have a lot of people ask, or I guess comment on when it comes to the Spright videos. The way that I play the deck, the way I typically play out the combo line, pretty much always go for Sprind before the Gigantic. While going for Gigantic first does let you play around a Nibiru better, I think that most of the time, actually pretty much every single time, it's going to lead you to having a weaker board state. And I mean, it's always going to be a calculated risk, right? But I think that sometimes people err on the side of caution a little bit too much. Here, by the way, we're able to use Call By against the Creation King of the Graveyard to stop the McTillen revive effect, because the Memento McTillen has to check the level of the card that it targeted in order to revive the other monster. So, also will stop my opponent from using Creation King next turn. But anyway, especially turn 1, like, I will say that there are some times where I will go for Gigantic first, but that is mostly hand dependent, and not really dependent on whether my opponent has a Nibiru or not. I mean, it's something worth keeping in mind, but I think that more often than not, you should be going for Sprind and then Gigantic, instead of Gigantic to always play around Nibiru. Now here, we're frustratingly going to leave my opponent at 100 life points, because, I mean, if I had just searched the red instead of the carrot, you know, I would have been able to have gone for lethal here. That would have been that 100 extra damage. But at the same time, still don't know what my opponent's last face down is. My carrot could have easily been the reason I was able to do as much as I did. Here I'm going to Ash Blossom the track. They go for Normal Summon Lurie anyway. I'm going to go for Esphilonite to banish the Lurie, assuming they don't have anything relevant to play in their hand, especially given how the last turn played out. And yeah, now we're able to just swing in for lethal, easy peasy. So yeah, like I said, this deck is able to play Droll and Lockbird very easily, which of course is a card that's very good in the current metagame. And even if you're not against Ryzeal, it still has uses in a lot of matchups. Memento, it is actually a little bit weak there, but it did help us out in that particular situation. Now this game's against Ryzeal. Unfortunately for them, it was one of those games where they just did not find a starter. Even if they did, I did have Maxi, Ash, and Nib. So I liked my odds pretty decently here. My opponent's going to draw phase Maxi, I guess technically standby phase Maxi me. Got an Ash Blossom for it, but they're going to throw out a Called By. So rather than try to push through the Maxi with a hand like this, I'm actually not going to do that at all. This is one of those scenarios where I think it's not a good idea to play through Maxi on turn 2 and just try to OTK. I think a lot of players would do that here, but I'm just going to go Engraver for Tract and pass, and I really only did that for deck thinning and to see if they had an Ash Blossom. And as you see my opponent go draw pass again, that's exactly why I did that, right? Because I already know my opponent doesn't have any relevant plays in hand. They're basically in top deck mode, and that's probably why they were so desperate to get the Maxi out. Now, I'm looking at my hand and I'm like, okay, even if they do top deck something, I still have Maxi and Ash Blossom and Nib. Like, I'm gonna be fine. So that's why I decided not to play through the Maxi at all there. So they have another Maxi, we're gonna Ash it. They're gonna chain Droll and Lockbird, but as I already mentioned, this deck does not care about Droll and Lockbird at all. We were able to play through it just fine, especially at this point where I've already used the Fiendsmith Tract effect, right? Yeah, I think that's, if you're playing the Fiendsmith variant of Spright, that's the only place Droll and Lockbird will hurt you, is if you go Engraver for Tract and then they Droll you and you don't have any other plays in your hand. That's the only scenario where Joel and Lockbird can truly lock you out of being able to make plays. But the only searches that Spright does in Archetype are Blue and Jet. So if you're going to get hit with Joel as a Spright player, they're probably going to do it when you Blue to add the Jet. But even if they did that, right, and you can't add the starter, you still have the 2 bodies to go into either Sprint or Gigantic to, start turboing out more stuff. So you'll lose out on a body, which is, a little unfortunate. But as far as like putting together your turn 1, end board, the Joel and Lockbird is not going to be enough to stop you. All right, so here I'm going to use the Fiendsmith engine to set up a Caesar. No reason not to, just get some extra damage on board. Plus, I still technically don't know what my opponent's playing, even though, of course, now post-game I know it's Ryzeal. I was still thinking, like, okay, if it's like a Labyrinth or something and they have like a welcome, I don't know, they would have flipped it already, but again, no reason to take any chances, right? Might as well just make the Caesar again, no reason not to. And then we're going for Elf for the blue. Blue doesn't get to search, but it doesn't matter. We have lethal on board, even without the Gamma Burst here. That's just lethal on board because of the 3200 Gigantic and the Caesar. Okay, so this game is actually going to be against Labyrinth. It's going to be a nice little back and forth game here. We get to go first this time around, and even though I have the Fiendsmith's Lacrima in my hand, I decided to go normal summon Swap Frog. Because I already have both Blue and Jet, I think getting the level 2 monster out is a little bit more important here. If they'd had Valor or Ash Blossom for the Swap Frog, that wouldn't have affected anything. Even let's say they have something wacky like Ghost Ogre to try to get the level 2 monster off my board, still could have gone Ronin, Banish Swap Frog, summon Special Blue, Special Jet. But yeah, now we get to combo with the red and the carrot up. Another reason why I don't typically bother playing around Nibiru when I'm doing Spright turn 1s is that it's actually, in a lot of hands, it's really easy to set up a negate before you get to 5 summons anyway. If it's not Spright red, then you can often use, like let's say you open Nimble Beaver plus Spright blue, right? You could go normal summon Nimble Beaver, special Angler from deck, special blue, blue F, add Jet, special Jet, Jet, add starter. Not only from there could you go starter for red to, play around the nib, or you could overlay Blue and Jet to make Djinn Buster. This is something that I didn't really do much in this play session just because of how the game's played out, but I've talked about in previous Spright videos. Actually, I'm about to make one right here. Djinn Buster. I'm a really big fan of, whenever possible, making this mid-combo. I just really, really like Djinn Buster. It's good mid-combo. It's a good piece to add to your end board. It's just Blue plus Jet makes it. You have room for it in the extra deck, so you might as well. Alright, so my opponent's going to lead with the Ariana to search. I'm going to use the Djinn Buster to negate that. The reason I'm using Djinn Buster first is because now I can use either red or carrot to send the Djinn Buster, which no longer has any materials anyway, to negate and destroy. But it's going to go Dominus Impulse here. I didn't negate that with carrot because I was like, I'm pretty sure they're probably going to have a scarier spell or trap card, given that it's Labyrinth. They are going to go for the Lady Lab, and that's when I'm going to use the red, sack the Djinn Buster, that way I negate and destroy the Lady Lab. Don't have to deal with it anymore. I'm going to let the Impulse negate my IP, and yeah, they're trying to move to battle phase here. We're going to use Elf to bring back Jet before they go to battle. That way they don't just Ariana battle over the Elf. They choose to battle over the IP. That's fine. We lose out on the ability to go into SP, but I'm not super concerned about that. They're going to go set 3 and then overlay Typhone on top of the Ariana. This is a little bit scary. Typhone bouncing carrot doesn't look like a lot here, but it does mean my opponent will get to activate trap cards during my draw and standby phase without me having the ability to put down the carrot first. So they're going to lead with a Dogmatica Punishment to pop my Spright red, using a bit of an obscure target here to try to pop my Elf, but I have a call by. I'm going to use that on this fusion monster they sent, Blazing Bombardment, whatever it was. That way I can negate it. Plus, I don't think I'm going to get much better use out of call by this duel anyway, so that seems perfect to me. They do end up having a welcome card. It's Big Welcome Lab, but they go for a lady, and they have to bounce their own Typhone, which is pretty fine with me. First action, my main phase 1, I'm going to throw the Spright carrot on the board. That way I don't have to worry about this last face down card from my opponent here. And now I'm just going to try to board build for lethal. There's 2 different ways we could lethal here. We could pretty easily go for either the Gamma Burst OTK or the Shadow Mosquito OTK, or Porque no los dos. We are actually going to set both of them up here because it's trivially easy to do so. Another reason why I really like Spright is that the OTK lines there's multiple OTK lines and it's pretty easy to get to them. Like as you can see here, I could already swing in with Gamma Burst for lethal, but I'm still just going to make the Shadow Mosquito anyway because I like Shadow Mosquito. If I'm going to OTK, I like doing it with the Shadow Mosquito. Putting the counter on. Yeah, the last trap card ended up being the Destructive Karma Cannon. And even if they had flipped that earlier, like, they would have hit... Honestly, the most impactful thing about that would have been them hitting like 2 or 3 monsters. Would have been really annoying. But I still had more than enough resources in my hand to just board build back up. They would have been able to set a card with Lady Lab, but I think getting rid of the back row and Lady Lab, excuse me, in one turn wouldn't have been the most difficult thing in the world. But yeah, I accidentally activated the detach effect twice on Mosquito, which is actually the first time I've made that misclick. I'm always paranoid about it, but I had enough bodies, it didn't matter. We just had lethal anyway. You don't get to do double damage for 2 counters, unfortunately. Alright, so this is going to be another game against Ryzeal here. We're going to go first, and unfortunately we open one of the kind of more awkward hands you can open, which is Nimble Beaver plus Angler, excuse me. And here I am going to go for Gigantic first. This is what I mean when I say whether you go for Gigantic or Sprint, for me, tends to be more based on what's in your hand, rather than if you think your opponent has Nibiru or not. To an extent, I'm like, if they have it, they have it, but also, again, it's pretty easy to play around it otherwise. Like here, for example, if I really wanted to play around Nib, like in that board state where I have Gigantic Blue Jet, if I was really concerned about playing around Nib, I could use Blue plus Jet to make Jin Buster. I mean, I already 2-locked us because of Gigantic, but let's assume I hadn't, right? You can still go for Jin Buster there, activate Starter, get another body, link into Elf, and then boom, you're already off to, you know, getting your combo line established. So yeah, but when you open Beaver plus Angler, it's really awkward because you have to go Beaver for Angler from your deck, but then you can't really make Sprint to send Angler. Now, you could Beaver for Beaver and still have an Angler in your deck, but then if you Sprint to send Angler, you're only summoning 1 Beaver out of your deck, and it's not really worth it at that point, so. Okay, so here my opponent's going to lead with X, Send, Aggregator. I'm going to try to use Maxi as well as Elf to revive. They do have a cross-out for the Maxi. I was mostly using Maxi as bait here. Well, I don't know. If I did kind of want the Maxi to resolve, but it's nice, I guess I should say, it is nice that the Maxi can bait out something like Crossout or Call By, and that I can use Droll here. Actually, I did try to play around Call By. If you noticed, when I used the Maxi, was when the Elf effect still hadn't been used on the Chain Link. So if they chained Crossout, I could have, or Call By rather, I could have used Elf to revive the Maxi and dodge it. But we're still going to resolve a Droll and Lockbird against them here. I'm also going to use Little Knight to banish their X Ryzeal, because Sword Ryzeal requires them to have a Ryzeal monster on field or graveyard. Unfortunately for me, they just had plug-in anyway, so they can still summon the Sword Ryzeal and then go into Detonator, which is really unfortunate. If they didn't have that plug-in, I think I would have been pretty well set here, but now Detonator's online, and yeah, they already battled over the Little Knight. I'm already in a very precarious position here because of my, you know, the fact that they're just going to start popping my stuff. And then they Plasma Hold the Elf before I could even do anything. That was really rough. So here I go for a Sprint, forgetting that I had already used both of my Anglers. But it didn't really matter here anyway, to be totally honest. Like if I had the 2 level 2 bodies and I went to Elf and tried to revive something, they'd simply pop the Elf. I'd only have 1 body. If I tried to go for Gigantic, they simply pop the Gigantic. I have no bodies. So yeah. Even if I had like Onibimaru or Soul Sweeper in my extra deck, that would have been enough to do it, unfortunately, there. Alright, last duel for the video. Gonna be going first again here. They're gonna lead with Mulch Army Perulia. We're gonna Ash it. Oh yeah, this deck. This was like a 60 card Blue Eyes Centurion deck that also played a ton of hand traps. I feel like it had more hand traps than Engine. Very interesting build, but yeah, Perulia I definitely want to negate. Sprite's one of those few decks where like Perulia actually does just wreck you like about as hard as Fuelos or Maxi does. Of course, it's pretty obvious we do a lot of special summoning from the hand in Sprite, but yeah, I definitely did not want that to resolve. Plus, I wasn't really worried about Perulia being bait either. I figured even if they have a Maxi later on, I just have the Call By in my hand anyway, so. They're going to throw a Druid Swarm on the board by banishing my Spright Blue. This felt like bait. I really felt like they were trying to bait out my red here, so I decided not to use it. But it turns out what they were actually trying to do is go for a Hop Ear Squadron. Yeah, no, this is Blue Eyes Centurion, but yeah, they're teching a lot of very interesting stuff here. I'm definitely going to negate the Hop Ear Squadron. I debated letting it resolve because they're going to try to go for Excel Stardust into, like, probably Baron, right? I could have called by the Hop Ear Squadron, the Excel Stardust trying to bring back, but I didn't want the Druid Swarm send effects to resolve. So that's the main reason why I decided to negate the Hop Ear rather than waiting. Plus, I figured if they still had a hand trap, I could call by it, or potentially use call by during their turn at some point. Alright, so we're gonna go for the Frog plus the Ronin. Gonna make the IP Masquerena. Going for the Ronin Revive. And normally I would end on this kind of a board state with just the red carrot IP Ronin, but since they have a Druiswarm online, I decided to try to go for the Little Knight. But then I realized, oh, I didn't use an extra deck monster. No, rip me. It completely blanked on it there. Just, yeah, totally missed that. So, misplay there. But we're still going to try to use the Elf to revive the red. Unfortunately, my opponent does have a called by. But what I'm going to do here is use the Little Knight to balance itself out with the Druiswarm. Because I know my opponent's only got 2 cards. One of them's at Hoppier. So they can't go normal summon it to go for the Excel Stardust here. I'm assuming that's what they were planning on doing. But yeah, they have Hoppier and one other random card left in hand, so they're just going to pass right back over to me. And right off the bat, I'm going to just link away the Druiswarm in order to bring out the Underworld Goddess to, again, avoid having to deal with the Hoppier. Plus, I can still use Elf to revive, like, Jet for starter and go for plays at this point. So yeah, there we have it. There are the games, and here is the build. I still do think Fiendsmith is probably the most powerful variant of Spright, but I don't think Pure is that much weaker, as we've discussed on the channel. Yeah, builds relatively standard. We are playing fairly like low amount of hand traps like Valor and Imperm, but that's to make room for 3-draw and Lockbird, which is not only really good in this meta, but again, really good in Spright in general. I like having the Ghost Ogre here, not just because it's good in general, but as a crossout target, because Ghost Ogre against Gigantic is really, really, really bad, and I would like to avoid it in any situation that I can. But yeah, thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. It really does not only mean a lot to me, but really does help out the channel. Let me know if you want to see more Spright content. Always down to make more Spright videos. But yeah, we're going to round out the rest of the extra deck here. Again, fairly standard, but that'll do it for now. And yeah, this is Hexlex. I'm signing out and also hoping that you have a fantastic day. Hey everybody, Hexlex here. Thank you so very much for watching all the way to the very end of the video, which by the way is one of the best ways to support the channel. Speaking of supporting the channel, take a look at the names on screen. These are folks who have been so generous as to either join as a YouTube member or subscribe over on patreon.com/Hexlex to support. There's also perks for doing so. If you would like to see YouTube videos early, as well as some exclusive videos that get uploaded to YouTube, but for one reason or another I decide not to publish, definitely go ahead and hit that join button to see content early, as well as some exclusive content. If you're looking for more exclusive content, over on patreon.com, I upload exclusive videos that are not posted on YouTube just about every single day. Whether you choose to subscribe over on Patreon, join as a YouTube member, or simply continue to watch, your support is greatly appreciated. Thank you so very much. But for now, this is Hexlex. I am signing out, and I hope that you have a fantastic day.